Welcome you all. Good that you're all here. First, I would like to invite the three of you to share your experience or example with us from your very perspective. We've heard Melita's perspective. What do you think makes up a valuable and fruitful supervision relationship? Martin, do you want to start?
Hello. Yes. So, like I represented, I'm part of the Orpheus Institute as a doctoral researcher, and I'm doing my PhD there. I'm on my second year, and my supervisor is Jonathan Impet. He's the main investigator for. We have a research cluster, we call it a cluster research group called Music, Thought, and Technology, and I was trying to pick my brain and choose a situation that I think constitutes, to ask for a very specific experience of what constitutes a fruitful supervision relationship. And I think I had an experience on what was probably, if not the first, but one of the very first supervision meetings that I had with Jonathan, right after I entered the Institute, and we went through the project proposition, so the thing that I sent to start the PhD trajectory, and he said, okay, so this is very well written, methodologically it's well resolved, you have your object of inquiry, avoiding research questions here, let's discuss it later. You have your object of inquiry and you have even provisional conclusions towards that object. So that's pretty clear. You could run with this and it would be relatively easy. So, and this was what he suggested. So what I want you to do is, I want you to not look at your project for a while. Just leave it on the side, and here's a whole bunch of stuff for you to look at. From completely new areas of new fields that I had no prior connection to specific artists that I should read and listen to, and that was it. And very simple action, which on the surface you can think of as, oh, this is not a very good example. Just gave you a whole bunch of stuff without explaining, and just said, yeah, run with it. But in reality, what he was doing, and this was my interpretation of it later, is that actually what he was doing is he creating a condition that allowed me to take ownership of my project conceptually. So instead of looking what I had there and saying, well, you know what, there's this guy that says something that resonates really well with what you're doing, this solves your problem. You should include actor theory, Heidegger, blah, 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 whatever. This solves your problem. Which would turn my project into, which would solve his problem with my project. Instead, he gave me an array of options and said, hey, look what resonates with you here and how this feeds back into your understanding of what you are doing, which is at the core, and we might discuss this later, of the difference between artistic research and other areas. All the options that he presented to me, they could all be included, or none of them could be included, or one of them could be included, and they are all complementary. Instead of one being the right answer to solve a problem. So this pseudo-subjectivity idea that doesn't fit in there. So it is my understanding of the things and how they represent with my personal practice that should be taken into account, because the whole project comes from my practice. And you hear that is pretty much a motto at the Orpheus Institute, which is, well, PhD project. Okay, so first of all, why does it have to be an artist doing? So a research institute for music. So why does this cannot be done by a musicologist? So your project is taking this atonal piece of music and just concluding that it's in D major after 4 years. That's not a research, artistic research project. So you convince us that it has to be done by an artist. Then when it has to be you. those two things are crucial. So yeah, in a very simple, because that's what I needed at that moment of the trajectory, right in the beginning. Afterwards, we had other situations where I had to manage experimental methodologies, the interviews and the practice, and he helped me with that in a very more hands-on approach. But at that moment, that very specific and, in a sense, broad and instruction helped me very much.
Thanks for sharing this experience and example. I immediately would like to hand over to you, Xan. You've been finishing your PhD, so with a kind of a fresh distance, what did you find very fruitful, maybe also considering certain phases of your PhD?
Thank you for inviting me here. Actually, after yesterday's meeting and talking, and I found who is joining this panel, maybe from 3 different sides, from the professor side, supervisor side, and institution side, also the student side. Then I want to make my question into myself is how I finished my PhD to respond from the 3 sides of my experiments. So actually, I did my PhD total in 4.5 years. So the beginning 3.5 years, my main job is visiting village and drawing and producing, keep producing. The last year, also teaching. And the last year, I did the writing and my solo exhibition of my past art I did in past 3.5 years, and also the diffusion. And so this is the time that I did. And then from my supervisor side, who is my officially supervisor, his name is Tom. And actually, at the beginning, he told me 3 sentences. It was remind me for today. First sentence told me, build your PhD life. PhD is not only, you are not students anymore. PhD is a way of life. You have to build your own habit of researching and making part of your life. And the second is very harsh. He told me, this is your PhD, not my PhD. So you have to know what you want to do, not not me. And then the third one is he told me, can you draw your PhD out? Because you know I'm good at drawing and I want to do drawing. Can you draw it out instead of writing a text? But actually to me, I'm feeling a lot of freedom because I had already 7-8 years working experience before in China. So he told me, oh, you can do your own thing. I said, okay, good. Let me be free. So he gave me so many freedom and the space. And also many trust, because he always trusts my idea. So this is the first thing. And the second thing, I think what he did good to me is he invited me to start to teaching, holding 2 workshops. Since the second semester I doing my PhD, which is super important because then he trained me become independent at early stage. Because I was always thinking, if you study architecture, study industrial design, you can get an internship in a company. But if you become an artist, who will give you an internship? No one. Then maybe become a teacher to build up your own system of your art and to spreading out to your students and get the feedback and modify. Maybe this is also very important for all the PhD students. Start to teaching or holding some small lectures. And then the third thing, yes, we meet not so often. We meet maybe 1 time per semester, like 2 times per year. Every time maybe 1 hour morning coffee. But this is also made me have to train myself to clarify what I've done in the past half a year, and clarify or short my question to my supervisor. So this is. Like my supervisor always asks me, can you speaking your question or speaking what you have done in 1 simple sentence? Then I also training myself in this way. Actually, it's also good that when I explain to other people, I can see it in very clear by simple sentence. So this is from my supervisor side. And also I have another technique support side. Actually, he is not my main supervisor, not in the contract. He's a senior artist. He's just a funny guy always hanging around in uni. But he's a genius artist. Then if I have any art question, then I can just go to him drinking a beer, go to a strand and ask him questions. I guess this happens a lot. And then the third part is the institution side. In our University of Art and Design Linz, we have a PhD office. They're not teaching the PhD, but they're organizing all the meeting and the conferences for us. So they have this, I guess it's very good routine. Like in every semester, they have cooperation with another 3 art universities in Austria to making a conference, like a symposium. And with one topic. Maybe this semester is about architecture topic, next semester is about fine art, next topic and semester is about experimental art. Then all the PhD students who study PhD, you must present your working paper once. So I joined once, then in architecture part, then I can meet all my peers in the same field. I guess this is very, very good, very important. Yeah. So this is how my PhD experiment.
Thank you. And it worked?
Yes, it worked out.
Andrea, we've heard about actual practices, current PhD position, and the perspective looking a bit back. When we move from the practice to the policy level again and to the question of structures, what is at stake? What do you see also referring to what Melita said? Any entry points for artistic research?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, it's great to be at this point in time and also at this place because I think we really have come full circle. I do remember very well in 2014 when the working group of artistic research of ELIA met in this building on the mezzanine floor. It was under Czarkuszycos and my lead that the working group constituted itself with Peter Dejans, Cecily Bock-Knudsen, Johann Verbeke, Henry Rogers, and Anna Dauchikova. And our exercise was to look at the Salzburg recommendations and other major documents of doctoral educations with the perspective, are we different or are we not? And of course we analyzed them and came to exactly the conclusion that you pointed out. We said, well, we share the same principles. Of course we are different, as a lot of disciplines are different, but the principles are the same. And this was the starting point of formulating the Florence principles. So the first issue here, and I'm only going to have 2 issues, is yes, exactly, we share the principles, and thank you, Melita, again for this inspirational structural talk. And it is indeed wonderful that you are here also, because a lot of what also fed into this project and into the whole discussion of artistic research in the education, in the doctoral education, artistic research comes from Lucas, the Unica Enterprise Network. So yes, we share the same principles. We are not different. Second issue, we are completely different. And the different lies in 3 letters, A-R-T, art. And I'm not saying this because I do believe that, the things we produce as artistic researchers are qualitatively different, or, don't ask questions or whatever, nothing like that. But I think there really is one crucial major difference. So, not even 1,000 meters from here, there is an exhibition in the Kunsthalle Wien. It opened yesterday. It's an exhibition by Anna Hoffner ex-Provulovic and Belinda Kaczynski. Anna and Belinda are alumni of the PhD in Practice program here at the Academy of Fine Arts. They are alumni of the first generation of the PhD in Practice program. So they are the very kind of initial, if you want, alumni, the initial new doctors, that this also too old institution produced. Now, I'm saying this because Anna is a newly appointed professor at the Mozarteum, University of the Arts in Salzburg. Belinda has been guest professor at the KHM in Cologne and on the verge of getting a professorship. So if you have one open at your universities, make sure that she applies for it. But they also opened this exhibition at the Kunsthalle. And so they are, important and successful artists. Now, why is this significant and why is this so different? It's so different because in your PhD programs, we have, of course, researchers. We have early stage researchers who will enter academia if they are successful. But they will also enter the industry in a market that's completely volatile, the art market, and that rejects academia completely. So in the art market, nobody asks, do you have a degree, have you been studying or whatever, it's completely unimportant. Sometimes it's even less than unimportant, because the art market sometimes has the attitude, well, artistic research, that's bad art, so, if somebody comes from university, let's not make an exhibition with them. And now you could say, well, in other fields we have that too, right? You study pharmacy, you make a PhD in pharmacy, and then you enter the pharmaceutical industry. But the difference is, the pharmaceutical industry is completely dependent on research, because there wouldn't be a pharmaceutical industry if there wouldn't be research. Now, the art market exists very well without academia, and I think this, not ambivalence, but this contradiction is really a structural dilemma that we have to cope with in the PhD education in artistic research. Because first of all, we have people entering our programs with a motivation that is twofold, and not only twofold, but contradictory. And also, as supervisors, we have to prepare them for two completely and also again contradictory worlds. And for the last 7 years, I have been really kind of fighting for the idea that we are not different, that we share the same principles, and that politically and strategically, in every context, we need to claim that, the analogy is so important that we have to get our share of the cake, and the cake is the same, the cake is the funding cake, the cake is the structural cake, the cake is the institutional cake, and this is all completely true. But as the title of this conference is Beyond, and Beyond, I think the next project and the next endeavor must look into this striking contradictory dilemma that we are facing in doctoral education in the arts.
Thank you, Andrea. That was provocative. What do you think about it? Who wants to join the discussion? Florian.
Thank you, Andrea, for that clear statement. I especially appreciate the last point. And I think that's the crucial question, is how do we pipe back the outcome of PhD or whatever research in the arts back into the arts? And that's why I really also appreciated the earlier question about the research question. Are we convinced that art is driven by questions? Or how, what are the concerns within art? I totally agree with that the PhD needs to be focused, so I don't want to make here too much rhetoric about focus, about wording, but it's like this implicit, very fast equivalencies between humanities and natural science research with the arts is sometimes, provoking certain problems, and I would like to come back to what Andrea said. How can we make sure that the people who gain from the outcome of these PhDs are other artists? I think we have to really look from the Nutznießer, the ones that really, from the field. Yeah? And the art market is not the field, I would say. I really like the figure of the artist. It's an artist who's appreciated by other artists. So coming back to that kind of, and the artist group, like forms of collectivity that are organized within the arts, that might be now, after all this discussion we had in the last decades, the more appropriate and interesting metaphors to follow. So I would like to end with a question to the panel. Would it be possible to borrow vocabulary from the history of the arts, how they organize themselves, to describe what is happening within, for instance, PhD supervision? Do we find analogies? Things we want to avoid, like master or the master ideas, instead of saying one-to-one supervision, maybe saying we don't want to have master education like in the 19th century, or can we rephrase these things with another vocabulary? What do you think about that?
What do you think?
First of all, let's come back to this question of the question. I mean, we have listened the day before yesterday to the discussion about the Frascati manual, and, if we want to be included into the list of disciplines, we have to claim that we are, scholarly discipline. That means that artistic research gains new knowledge. Now, how do you gain new knowledge? By asking questions. If you don't have questions, you don't come up with new knowledge. I mean, it's a systematics, and I don't think but I've said it before, we should be so completely hung up on that. The other thing is, I say the art market because the disposition as the artist that is appreciated by other artists is, I think, a position of privilege, that you have to, have the money to lead a life as that. I mean, people also enter PhD programs because they want to earn a living afterwards. They become new doctors not only because they want to, be bright and be great, but they also want to earn a living, and they can do that either in academia or in the art market in the widest possible sense. So in this way, I think this is something we have to be aware of, and this is also really important, I think, in the PhD. This is actually a discussion in all PhD education, right? I mean, there are supervisors who say, well, a good PhD project takes at least 7 years. I mean, come on, this is something people have to be able to afford, because in many countries people are not employed when they are doing their PhD. In Austria, they are, for example, not. They might have a stipend for 3 years, but not for 7 years. So we also have to really, and I'm wearing a t-shirt saying Klassenkampf. I think this is also really an aspect that we need to address in the context of PhD education.
My strategy for this, because as I understand it, artistic research compared to the normal quantitative and quantitative research, we are not question leader but practice leading researching. So my way how I did it is I keep in drawing, keep in practice, and at the beginning, actually it doesn't matter if I'm confusing or not confusing, I just keep draw something, and keep in do my thing, keep producing things. sometimes I thought, oh, what I'm doing is so nonsense. Sometimes I must be a genius, I draw so good. It doesn't matter how I'm feeling today, I keep draw something. Then after I draw 2 or 3 years, I have to transfer, because I create a technique to draw. I transferred my drawing language into I call artistic research language, because I thought the other researching they use text and data to show their researching. But we're artists, so we use different art formats to build up your researching. Then I found something in the end because my practice, then my strategies, because I found a result. So I create a question for my result. Then I have a question.
I would have to agree with that. I wouldn't add anything. The questions, they come from the practice as well, maybe if I could add one thing, it's the idea that kind of ties together a little bit of the discussion that was happening before. If we shift the focus from a pedagogical standpoint from generating knowledge to, so instead of thinking about the content, but thinking about the person, that might give a little bit of a different angle to the thing. So how do you, instead of thinking, well, we generate knowledge by asking questions or solving questions or doing research, but if you think about how you create a person, so you're not, you are empowering, like I said before, you're empowering the researcher, the PhD student, doctoral researcher, the person doing that trajectory, to become an active agent in their own learning process. And it ties very well with some of your slides. I said, well, at the end, you shouldn't have a good thesis, you should have a good doctorate. And if you arrive with that, if you have that as a central goal, in the end, it doesn't matter if they stay in academia, if they have to work at a museum, if they have to work as an artist, if they have to work at an artist market. They are able to take the lead and be an active agent in their own trajectory, even if it's academic or in other fields. So if you have that as a central sort of guiding line, that is, I think that, I'm not going to say that solves the problem, but it gives directions. And I really like what you said at some point, that, well, at the end of the PhD practitioner, they should know more about the particularities than you. And in my pedagogical practice, I tend to say to students that my end goal there is to become unnecessary, which is not a very good economical guideline, but that's the thing. You're teaching them to just do their thing on their own, and yeah, that gives a different angle to generate knowledge with the questions. Maybe focus on the person instead of the content, and let the person, with their own sets of repertoires, with their own sets of previous knowledge, because no one comes as a blank slate. They all come with their previous knowledge. Respect that, embrace that, and build on that. That shifts that gives a new angle.
Does that open up something for you, Edita?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to comment too much on really essential art things because, again, I'm the outsider. But at the same time, this discussion that is going on is some kind of déjà vu for me, because this was exactly the same kind of discussions we had it when we started to develop documents and policies, and when the whole thing with doctoral education started in Europe, and this was in 2005. I mentioned, that there was a cacophony, listening colleagues from different fields, like humanities, social sciences, life sciences. We had very similar arguments among ourselves as you have in now art compared to the other fields. For example, it was a discussion of duration of degree, do you need 10 years, 7 years, or you can do it in 3 years or 4 years? Discussion of how frequently you visit, you meet with your doctoral candidate, like you meet twice a year, like once a semester, or you meet once a week or whatever, So there were different arguments, and all the arguments were grounded in something. And finally, I mean, I can go on with those issues. So, I mean, there was a huge number of arguments, very differently positioned from different areas, and even within the social sciences and humanities, or even sciences in general. At the same time, you know, it was some kind of, it turned out that we can make an agreement, and this is again coming back to the principles. Principles is something that should lead all of us, but then their implementation or some kind of adjustment is a little bit different when you take a different field. So we do not, I started my presentation, if you heard, I said we never were aiming to have all the doctoral programs or models or whatever you name it the same. It's a very heterogeneous system within Europe and outside Europe as well. But in Europe, we agreed we are going to follow and implement the same principles, and I think that this is important. Many things that you raised right now, I mean, in a discussion, if you go back to your principles that you accepted, like in the Florence principles, you already have them there. I mean, and I just took the part from supervision. This is what you have it in art. So this is just again the question of implementation. One more thing that I would just shortly like to comment, and then you can make an analogy for yourself, whether you like it or you don't like it, you can kind of flip it on side. Andrea said, like, okay, this is a difference in terms of once you have a PhD, when you go out of research area or academia, then you don't need this research in art. I mean, this is not appreciated. Just to help you to claim that we are very similar. It's the same thing in other fields. Many of those who gain PhD, they don't need really PhD degree for their work. I told you that the statistics is different. In some countries, only 10% of people stay within academia or research area, 90% go out. In many of them, especially in social sciences and humanities, they don't need this PhD. They do it in their phase when they want to just upgrade their knowledge, they want to have a different experience, some of the things that I was mentioning. But it's not that the degree itself is appreciated or required by their work. Sometimes it's even something that is too much on the way. Sometimes it's not even appreciated by the employer. There are those reports as well. So this is also some similarity. Of course, in some areas it's more maybe required. It's not exactly the same, but it's not like everyone who does research and gets a degree in humanities, social sciences in particular, but also in science, that is really appreciated once when they have it and it's directly used. PhD brings other things than just doing research. It opens and it should kind of change. This is again going back to the new doctor. It's like change the way of seeing work things, change the way that the person is capable of searching for new information, putting them together, assembling, creating new ideas. So the thesis or whatever you do in the process is just one thing that you get. You get many other things as well. And this is a question of a good doctoral education. If you do have a good doctoral education, you're prepared more for those other things that you somehow internalize, not always being even fully aware. If you do have a classical type of doctoral education, and if you just do the good thesis and nothing else, then you have less of those other things that you actually gain through doctoral education.
But thanks for picking up the challenge, and I challenge you back because I'm really thinking hard of an example. Because if you talk about the art market or the artist or whatever, this is not going outside academia in any other field, but this is actually the professional field that you have done your doctorate in. So, if you in psychology, for example, have a PhD who finishes their PhD and then they don't go into academia, but they, I don't know, they work as a psychologist in the field, I don't know, a child psychologist in a school or whatever, then of course the PhD helps. Then of course they have gained knowledge that advances them in the field. Then of course they have a degree that will make them at one point move up the professional ladder. Because without the degree, you will not become head of the unit or director of anything. So this was exactly kind of my point, that of course in all PhDs people move out of academia and do something completely different, fine. But in artistic research, if you move, and very often people do both, right? I mean, they move in academia and become professors, but also move in the art world. And I do think, but I will be happy to hear examples where you say, no, this is exactly the case in other fields also. I do think there is a particularity.
Maybe Magno wanted to respond first, and then we go back to the...
Hello, I just wanted to add to one point that you said, that, well, the principles, the guidelines, they're already there, you just have to implement it. But I think that's precisely the point, that some of the particularities of those principles, it's not a matter of finding the proper way of implementation on a different area, but it's the fact that by nature they don't apply. Because, for example, yesterday I remember which presentation was the ethics presentation, and at some point they said, well, the research needs to be, I'm trying to remember exactly how it was worded, but it was maybe that research needs to be impartial and subjective. Well, artistic research, you are absolutely, it was saying that you need to be impartial and you should be objective on an ethical research, and artistic research is precisely subjective. It's my view of the thing, and it's my practice, it's practice-based, so it comes back to the person. So I would see almost as incompatible a way to implement an objective and impartial artistic research. I wouldn't know how to do that, I think.
So, back in Dusan, Alexandra, and Peter.
I have the microphone, maybe I can go first? Is there a I want to get back to the point of and beyond. So we're in Vienna, the home of the EGU, the European Geosciences Union. A group of 10,000 scientists that meet here every year. There's a small group of artist researchers that have residencies at NASA. We're researching Anthropocene questions of climate change, space exploration, etc. So I'm wondering, on the one hand, how you can use these instruments that have been discussed the last few days to legitimize or establish artistic research in other fields, so piping in not only back to the art market, but also to other realms that are desperately needed to be researched in new and different ways. And then the second question of how can we, as supervisors, open the doors for our students to these other worlds beyond the art market. Thank you.
Dusan, would you like to continue, that we then go back to the panel?
But I think that the question is quite complex, so maybe if you would have a...
Anyone to answer quickly?
I can just do the second part, which is for me something that I can tackle a little bit. The first part, I think it's more for art people. So when you ask how to open the doors as a supervisor for those other whatever comes besides art itself, this is again the same question we had it in other areas of research, and this is related to the word career planning. And this is again something that we struggled, not all the universities, not all the doctoral programs, not all the supervisors like that. And very often the attitude is like, oh, I don't care, what will happen once when you exit the university, we just do what we do in research here, and then you will find a job, you will do whatever you need. And little by little we were changing, and again, it's like if you, I'm sure you're aware, at many universities there are offices for career planning, there are special trainings, there are some generic skills that doctoral researchers or doctoral candidates have. So it's like the supervisors are becoming more and more aware that they also play the role in those opening doors, not only being focused on particular doctoral program or doctoral research that is going on. And it's a process again, it's not easy to accept 501, it's not easy to organize all those things, but this today became a regular part of doctoral programs at many universities, and sometimes it's organized on the central level, sometimes on the faculty level, sometimes on the department level. But anyway, this is the way that it was resolved, or it has been resolving in other research areas. And I'm sure that something similar, again, adjusted to your needs, could be done in the art as well.
Thanks, I will follow because I think my comment and question is also dealing with the kind of output territories, like the academies are one of the territories where the PhD researchers end up and they are useful. Then there are these interdisciplinary projects or emerging projects and zones which I think we have to nourish and we have to invent and make alive, and that there is the market. And I was just checking, which is kind of a joke, because there is a ranking of a Czech young artist, which I personally hate. It is done by a very strong commercial bank, and they have a particular specialist who is every year checking the CVs. And paradoxically, out of 10 first most selling artists, 5 have PhD degrees. Even the very first one is a very good PhD student and absolvent. So I found it quite funny that somehow this artistic research break into the art market and change it, somehow modify it. So hopefully it will stay like this forever. But my question was also maybe, now I'm getting to the question which was also the reaction toward the research question, which you have already a little bit discussed, that we also have in our department these conflicts about demanding the research question or not demanding the research question. And I thought myself about my own practice, that I always start to work and don't have the result. I don't know where it leads. So my personal practice is always like starting from the nowhere to somewhere, and at the end there is always a result. So while the particular humanities and scientists they work probably in the opposite trajectory, so that you have to really describe the goal and try to find a way how to achieve it. And my question is whether in this kind of artistic, more organic way of not having questions, having them at the very end, as you said, that you have a result and then the question come up. So how to externalize the methods, the process. So I think that publishing is one of the tools to do it. But what are the others, like stable methods where we should let PhD researchers to share the knowledge, not share the outcome, but share the process and methods.
Yeah, you want to respond?
Because you mentioned the publication, the reason I come to this meeting, I also want to propose if we should build up some more artistic research magazine for ourselves. Then we'll have a platform for communicating what we get results in the process. Because when I try before I tried to find a job in China, the university, if you want to find a job there, it doesn't check in how much exhibition you attended, how much art you did, they're only checking how much paper you published. Then I tried to publish artistic research and I found, if I go to architecture, they're thinking this is to art. I go to art, they're thinking why you write such a theoretic paper, this is to text. Then I thought, yes, this is time we need our own artistic research magazine. I know there's one online artistic researching online magazine. But I thought maybe we also need more our platform, then we can discussing all the question resulting. Just a purpose.
So, quickly, before we move on back to the audience, we have Peter and Anne-Hélène.
I would just add that maybe once we look at this caricature of what we do, we have the practice and at the end there's a question. Sometimes it sounds like we're talking about a I joke that it's like a penicillin methodology. Like, at the end, hey, we found something. And that feels like a stretch. Like you do your own practice and at the end you find something that I have to publish, so I'll do that. That's absolutely not it, of course. And that's why I think the methodology between artistic research and non-artistic research differs. Because you have the object that you're looking at, you have your source of inquiry, which is your practice. But the difference that, like you said, sometimes in other areas you need a very specific answer. The example of the corona vaccine or a metal alloy for a beam or construction, you need a very precise answer. It's 42%, not 40, and that's it. While in artistic research we have our object of inquiry, but we can look at it through different, some people use the metaphor of the lenses, you can look at it in different angles. In my pedagogical research, I call it a cartography approach. So it's like a map. You have something and you can put several layers on top of it. You can look at the rivers, you can look at the topography, you can look at the roads. They're complementary, but they all can coexist, and you can focus on one, and not putting one of them doesn't mean that the research is incomplete. So I guess my point is that the object itself can be looked through different lenses, with different layers, and that is different. Maybe one of the points that the methodology is different from other areas where we have the ability to do that in the arts, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a question. That's the thing.
So maybe we can do the two of you together, that we can then kind of have a run together on responses.
Okay. Maybe I will start with a shocking thing, but I have a good life insurance. If an artistic researcher enters too easily the market, I think we are doing the wrong thing. And by saying that, I want to say there is a we know all this relationship between artistic research and artistic development. And artistic development without artistic research is perfectly possible. That's the thing we see daily. And artistic research without artistic development is, in my eyes, senseless. It's working with artistic material, hands-on, reflecting, criticizing, analyzing, coming to new insights, and putting it again into not the market, but the field. So, in my eyes, artistic research should push the borders of the artistic development, should push the borders of the discipline. Where do we think that in society the borders of our discipline, in my case music, is pushed? Do we think it is pushed in concert houses, in the Palais des Beaux-Arts in Brussels? Do we really think that the borders of the music discipline, the knowledge, the understanding, is pushed by recording companies? Do we think they, at festival organizers, do we really think? Of course not. They follow the rules of the market. Do we, and that is very, very delicate, do we think that conservatoires, in my case, conservatoires are pushing the borders of our knowledge? I'm not so sure. I'm inclined to think not necessarily. Maybe even simply no. So it is artistic research, and one of you, I think, you mentioned, it's the place to be, artistic research, where you push the borders. So if we push the borders and we think we can end up by pushing the borders immediately the market, then I think we are very naive. So that's our responsibility in a way, to exactly push, to exactly be not immediately accepted by the market. My dream is that one day we will have leading people at concert houses, at museums, where the top is led by artistic researchers. That might change one day our world.
Thank you, Peter. Anne-Helen, would you like to? No.
So happy also for the context that Andrea gave in the end of her first panel talk. And you mentioned this whole circle gun, and you started to speak about what happened here in 2014-15. But the whole circle closed also for us who entered later, let's say, to the advancing supervision project. But there were a presence of Andrea Bright and also, let's say, Ante Daučíková, who also didn't continue in the project, was so decisive. And the fact they could not continue in the project completely influenced the project. As perfect as the project it is, as perfect as the team Vienna helped us to develop and even had a big impact on it, I just want to say it matters who was there to inside the debate, inside all the brainstorming in the beginning, and I just again have to complete this. But then also I want to say many times we hear mention, and I think stereotype other disciplines, research, let's say vaccinations, medicine, many times said how we know how clear and simple they have it, no question, and they have a clear result. I can tell you right now, my mother-in-law, she's 75 years old, researcher and supervisor in epidemiology, and it connects argument of Andrea in the end that, of the impact on the society and the field, not only market, and Peter's comment. Very briefly, she is a case of epidemiologists, but not in what we lived through in COVID recently, but meningococcus, which is a bacteria that kills in 48 hours, very, very often. And their voice, public voice in the society, in the field of epidemiology, was not heard until now, that the industry, the market of pharmaceutics, should give for free access to teenagers for their vaccine. Their voice was not heard till this catastrophe happened in another field of epidemiology. What I want to say, that they have also a lot of ambiguities in questions, a lot of similar uncertainties and weak points in questions. We are stereotyping them, and we ask them not to stereotype us as researchers. And especially the last thing I learned from her, and it was a shame, we often say we own our doctorate candidate. I have two candidates, and they never say I have her as my supervisors. They very nicely, as Magda and Chan saying, my supervisor is, or I work with them, and my 75 years old mother-in-law always says I work with I supervise two candidates. So she never says I have them. And it's a little change in language, as we learned to say his and her research. Recently this word to say his and her or their research. So whether these kind of funny maps and circles have meaning, let's mainstream our work. We supervise something or we work with somebody. It's so helpful to learn from these other disciplines, also these kind of really small things like language. But I must say, this was a wonderful and it's a wonderful project, but let's not stereotype them if we don't want them to stereotype us in our practices. But anyway, very good panel discussion, very good inputs. Super nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I think you have been challenged as a panel by Peter. Maybe before we go into the final round, where I would like to ask you to think about what is your, not take-home message, but our take-us-forward conclusion or learning or understanding of the discussion we had today. what I was hearing is both from the presentation we had at the very beginning and also from the discussion, it's words that matters, it's a vocabulary. I also heard that oral a vocabulary that could be challenged. I think there are other terms that were quite present and also common between the different disciplines and speakers here in the panel. I heard about ownership. It's taking actorhood, making yourself an actor, and to create an agreement. So I'm wondering, is this something we could work with as a kind of categories which could lead us further in this overall discussion that is, and that should be an important thing. Of course, we are always also discussing artistic research. What is artistic research all about? But in fact, it's also about the process of supervision that is the very specified focus we wanted to give ourselves now. And this would be also my request to you. How can we bring this overall discussion about the qualities of a field back to what we have been talking about yesterday? What makes the supervision relationship a fruitful relationship? What brings us forward with the next step? What do you think?
Is this already the last round? Yes. So the last chance to speak. Right?
You may continue afterwards. We are inviting for lunch and further talks. That's the aim of the exercise.
I will answer the question, and I think two things. What Peter said, I think, is absolutely wonderful and really confirms that the PhD world and I'm really shying away from saying market, but of course it's always a wonderful discussion. But the PhD world and the kind of market or whatever it is, completely different worlds, and yet we have to bring them together. And when you say a PhD candidate after completing their work immediately entering the market, then we have done something wrong. Well, it really depends who we admit to the programs. And very often we admit very refined artists. I mean, very often we admit to our programs not people who are 27, but who are, at a different age, who have a strong portfolio of artistic endeavors and who have already behind them a very dense artistic development that they want to complete with their PhD studies. But of course we also have others, but I'm just saying, and I'm saying this to come to this one point I want to make. We have talked a lot about supervision and over the last years, which I think is was completely apt, and I think what you find out in the project and the whole findings are really extremely valid. A next topic indeed could be admission, in the sense that we could start talking about who is starting the PhDs, how do we define this transition phase between MA and PhD. I mean, now we are in a stage where artistic research is also entering MA programs. This was not the case even 5 years ago, but now artistic research enters different curricula also, not only PhDs. So, if we stick with this idea of beyond, I think there might lie also another topic, and also, of course, the supervisors change in the way that often they have a PhD now, as we move along in time, which was also not the case 10 years ago. So, there's this topic. And my takeaway from today is definitely one about the word question. And I think it's fascinating that there is, and also important to acknowledge that there is this kind of need for discussion about the terminology, and also maybe this is something to be revisited. I mean, I just thought about a reformulation, right? If we say what needs to be at the beginning of a PhD endeavor is an investment into the material. So not a research question, but I mean, there usually always is a material. The material might be an artistic practice, it might be a musical practice, you know, it might be a photo archive, you know, whatever. So material, I think, is a term that a lot of artists deal with wherever they are. So, and if you don't say you want to pose a research question at this material, but we formulate where our investment in the material lies. Maybe this is a more appropriate way also to look at this necessity of having a research question at the start of a PhD project.
Thank you. Do you want to continue?
Actually, I want to bring home questions. Sometimes do we have to answer the question when people ask you why artistic research? When you did something and people say why you can't use another methodology to do this thing, then sometimes I thought, do I really have to answer? Is this a correct question for me? Yes, you use the biologic, create a new vaccine for the corona, you use something to analyze, get new data. I use my way to create a new arts or new joy, new music. I create a new acknowledge. So why not artistic research? Then sometimes, also my PhD supervisor once told me, maybe it's also a little tricky. He said sometimes you don't have to answer the question. If question is wrong, you just say what you want to see. And also for the PhD, my another outstanding reviewer from the Hong Kong University also told me, when you finish PhD, it's not finish everything, it's just the beginning of your academy or artist or whatever period for the future. Actually now it's just the beginning, so I'm never thinking I'm something if I'm a human. But yes, I'm finished my PhD, now I continue to try to survive in academic work, try to create my art, try to continue to do another project. That's it.
Thank you. Magno?
I was thinking here, and I think my very concrete suggestion of something to take home is a reading assignment. Because a lot of what we're saying here, from ownership, from being active in your process, this is reflective, more than reflective. This is the core, and my colleagues from Orpheus have heard me talking about this a couple of times. This is the core of the work of Brazilian pedagogue Paulo Freire, famous for his Pedagogy of the Oppressed book. And this taking ownership of your own active, being active in your own process, this is the core of this work. And even the last question, so I cannot see properly because of the light, it ties very back to the feedback of the supervisor, because Paulo Freire is going to talk specifically about that you, as an educator, you never talk to, but you talk with. And the minute that you change that preposition, everything changes. You embrace horizontality. You see the other ones appear. So that it's a small thing, but it changes everything. So something to take home. Pedagogy of Freedom actually is a better book. It's a little smaller, from Paulo Freire. I highly recommend, because it connects so much with what we have been discussing here today.
Thank you. Melita.
I have three small things, and if I'm going to provoke you or irritate you with any of them, it's good, because I guess then you will have something to discuss more over lunch and agree or disagree. So one thing that I think a colleague from Holland, is it Peter? Belgium, okay, Belgium. Flanders, because I heard the accent. That's why I said Flanders, okay. I was talking about art development and art research. I would say what I extracted listening to you, I would say critical thinking. And the critical thinking is essential, very important part of doing PhD or doing doctoral research, doctoral program in any field. And I think that this is again something that connects or does not alienate doctoral research in art and in other fields. And I think it's extremely important. So what I heard by listening to you was a critical thinking. In terms of research and research questions, again, I don't think research in any field could be done without research methodology. Research methodology varies across all the fields, and this again includes art as well. Research methodology is a very regular course that doctoral students in all fields that I know have it. And I also witnessed many discussions, and differences among research methodology among different fields, and it could be really very different. I do not think that people who are not specialized in research methodology could adjust and develop research methodology even for their own fields. So it's again interdisciplinary kind of work and discussion. And I would say this is something that probably is in front of you, to have people who are really people who are developing research methodology and people who are from the arts, to sit together and discuss all those issues and to find some kind of whatever definition that suits your purpose and your needs. But I don't think that research could be done without research methodology. This is like, these two things do not go separately. And the third thing, which was initial starting point of this panel, was the supervision. Again, I think supervision might be quite different among different fields, but it could be also very different on a personal level, because it depends every time the combination of the two. So it's like supervisor and supervisee, so it's like doctoral candidate. And what we forgot here talking, that in your principles, Florence principles, you have two supervisors, so it's becoming even more complicated because you have two supervisors that need to somehow find a way of dealing with a doctoral candidate. So, and there are many things, as we already said, it's not only just the field, the topic, or whatever you say, it's many other skills that the supervisor needs. And this is why we do have developed, and this was again another topic to be discussed, because it was not always received in the best way, at least not at the beginning, to have all kinds of different trainings or skills development, whatever you call them. And this is a good opportunity, while talking and working on your personal skills as a supervisor, you actually have a time and place to exchange ideas and differences, and by doing this you get to this point also to critically think of your role as a supervisor, and this actually contributes to the quality of overall doctoral education in any area, and I'm sure it will do the same thing for the doctoral programs in art. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. I think a big applause to all on the panel. I feel we opened up again, and that was exactly the aim, not giving answers to questions. The title was Undoing Supervision, maybe it's also Undoing Artistic Research, Undoing Vocabularies, but take ownership and talk with each other. I think with this conference we hoped that we could open up a space for a dialogue, which we heard is important for both the supervision situation and also for the artistic research community. Thank you all for being with us. There is still an invitation for lunch to continue talking further. There's also the invitation to stay in touch, to contact whomever you have met over the last I could say 3 days if we include the Elia Artistic Research Working Platform meeting. We need to continue, I would say, and I would say this is a kind of a normative approach. Maybe we need to do that. If you have any questions you want to raise, there's the lunch tables. We finally have decided not to do a curated approach, but to give you the opportunity to talk to each other and engage with each other. It was great having you here. My final invitation is to repeat the rector's invitation from yesterday to visit the exhibition upstairs in our Gemälde Gallery from Rax Media Collective. Sorry, I'm already a bit tired after those 3 days. They are open. If you show your badge, the entrance is free for you. And I also want to come back to Andreas' example or invitation at Kunsthalle Wien. Belinda Kasim-Kaminski and Anna Hofner-Bruvulovic, they have opened yesterday and they are also open for you. Join them, have a look at it, and experience what artistic research at the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna is or has been all about. Thank you.